to take questions. I'm just curious if anybody has any questions. I know you had raised your hand a little earlier. We didn't get to you, but...
Do you remember? Why would you take this?
Just so we can hear you.
So I read a couple of books on willpower. I'm one of those people who doesn't read just one book on something. I have to relate 3 of them.
Good for you. That's awesome.
Doesn't mean I follow anything. It's just I have this knowledge that I could talk about that I never use. I read The Willpower is a Muscle. Did you read that in your book?
I didn't.
That the more you become better at being able to exercise your willpower.
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
That you get better at it, and so the next thing may not be so hard.
That's right.
Yeah, is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. It did speak about developing it, and they actually advocated. If you remember the controversy that came out about the Tiger Mother book, it's a lot of controversy around that. Asian moms were pushing their children too hard. But what these 2 scientists basically discovered is actually what they're doing is instilling this willpower muscle at a younger age, and that discipline is actually part of what serves these kids later with their ability to, stay in the trenches, so to speak. Did you read Willpower? Is that where you got this from?
I read 2 books on willpower. One was by a woman professor at a university. I don't remember the name of it.
Baumeister? Was it Baumeister?
I can email you tomorrow.
Yeah,
it's actually on my Kindle, and I don't have my Kindle today.
That's awesome.
And another one that was quite boring, short, but...
And what was the other one?
I don't remember the name of it.
The other book I wanted to tell you all about is a book called The Power of Habit. And that speaks about, they're both, speaking to the neurological conditioning of willpower and the power of habit. But reading them both together was very profound for me, because I could see how the willpower is in and of its own sense, this kind of, it's glucose related as well. We deplete our willpower as glucose gets depleted in our body, which is part of the reason why dieting is so hard. Because when our willpower is decreased, we are also in need of glucose. And that is why we are led to quickly go and have food, because it instantly, especially sugary treats, instantly will give us that glucose. And that's part of what dieting is so challenging. Of course, they advocate having glucose, the kind of slow glucose that's constantly filling your system, but that's hard to do, especially if you're working really intensely. The other thing that was fascinating about willpower is around dieting, is they said never judge. They don't believe dieting works, so they say never go on a diet, actually. And they also say never about any kind of food, that you'll never have it, because again, the brain doesn't work well with that. But the other thing they said that was amazing was that don't ever associate willpower, if you yourself or someone else you're dealing with is overweight, don't think that's an indication of them not having willpower. And that I thought was really profound, because I think there are a lot of people, that I've encountered through the years, and who do make that assessment. And he pointed to a number of people, but one of them he did point to was Oprah, and he said, if ever there was a woman who's an example of tremendous willpower, it's that woman. And her own battle with her weight, he said, is clearly indicative. I mean, they had scientific evidence, but they were just trying to say how a woman who is clearly got a lot of willpower, this challenge around her weight is just not indicative for any of us to think we don't have willpower. And I know a lot of women, a lot of the clients that I do work with, they do think that they don't have willpower if they're unable to keep the weight off. And that's just totally a misnomer. So I thought that was really very empowering thought to get that.
Any other questions? Pass it around.
Hi.
What's your name?
My name is Nancy. Hi, everyone. I only met some of you. My question is around, how do you handle when you have made a resolution or a goal and it's not going well? And how do you turn it around, not beat yourself up over it, obviously, but keep yourself focused on it and stick with it?
First thing I would do is assess if the goal itself is practical. How practical is it? Is the resistance you're having to the goal indicative of the goal being completely out of proportion to what's appropriate. I think we can be err on the side of being over expectant of our abilities in the midst of, I mean, I speak to women, you women here, so I'm presuming you are all, involved in a career that takes a lot out of you. The challenge we have with family, we are usually women who live in cities just have a lot on their plate. So I would say first assess, was this practical in the first place? Maybe ask for a friend that you really trust to give some input around that. My God, you want to work harder, but you work so hard already. Let's have somebody who you trust to weigh in a little bit on that goal. And then let's say you assess, yes, it's okay, it's fine, I'm ready to go. Then I would say, what about it is important to you? Start there. Start with what about that goal is so critical to you and so important to you, and what are the things that you could put in place to support that. I do believe that sense of locking in with somebody. Your friend is downstairs on the corner in the rain ready to run with you. It's a lot harder for you to turn over in the bed. You have to go down there. Put things in place that are kind of anchors that are going to call you forth. I have a couple of really important people to me whose opinions matter who are supporting me on this book journey. I get discouraged, I get scared, I get who am I to write this book? But I have these people who will send me these emails out of the blue and be like, don't be discouraged today, keep going. Put those things in place to get you to that finish line.
I have a question.
Okay.
My name is Kristen.
Hi, Kristen.
Hey. Hi. My name is Kristen, and I have a problem. My question, I think, has two parts. We seem to, in this conversation, have used the words goal and resolution sort of interchangeably. I'm sure you're familiar with SMART goals as the acronym. I'm curious if you in your practice have seen a difference, and if you have, how you can only have one goal. And if they are, in fact, time-bound, how that plays out.
That's a really good question. In a perfect world, right, we can have one goal. I think when it comes down to goals like SMART goals, it's probably not going to happen. But I think keeping this concept in mind that we really are only able to really give 100% of ourselves to one thing, I think it could potentially impact SMART goals. It could really make them more practical. At the end of the day, what we're wanting to do is achieve something. I do think we have a tendency to not be so practical around what we're trying to achieve. It's this empathy. That's the word that just keeps kind of ringing in my head. If we have empathy around those goals, whether in the work setting or in the personal setting, if we begin to really lean in on the humanity of ourselves, it doesn't mean we're not greatly capable, but there is just, I think, a little need for us to turn the volume up on our own sensitivity to our humanity. Most times I find clients, it's harder for them to be kinder to themselves than I have a hard time asking them to be harder on themselves. Most clients that'll come to me, it's not that they haven't been really dedicated, it's just that they've been dedicated in maybe one particular area of their life and not really recognizing their humanity. So does that answer your question?
Can I piggyback on that question? Because that was a good point.
Yes.
SMART goals. So at work, I have a ton of SMART goals. And part of that is because my management challenges me every day to make sure that I achieve certain things by the end of the year, or I set goals for myself, and I have to achieve them. Personally, so I can take on multiple goals at work and achieve them. Personally, I think the one goal thing really works better for me when it comes to things like weight, or it comes to different things that affect us, our body, or something that we want to do. So I find that to be more interesting, that you're more driven. I'm more driven at work. I don't know how many else is, that I can accomplish more goals for someone else than I can for myself. I can't take on more than 2 goals for myself for a year, or for a period of time where I've achieved those goals and move on. But there are things in between that you don't realize that you are. I think that people fail to understand, and I even failed myself. And I talked about this earlier. Is the point I'm trying to make is there are little accomplishments you make along the way that you don't even realize that you're making to get to that big goal. And those are little goals to get to the big goal. So I try to plan like milestones and other things like that to get to the goals. But again, it's great because I could do it at work or my personal business. And then when I get to my personal life, I just run out of time to kind of do that. And so maybe you can offer some balance to the room.
Well, one of the things I hear you say that I just want to speak to, the concept of taking on 1 or 2 goals for yourself, what happens is, and you'll learn about this in the power of habit, that I already said that other title, what he teaches us in that book is that when we take on that new goal, we are recreating a habit for ourselves. That it becomes second nature. You know, the way you cook your breakfast every day now is, you don't even think about it. When you do drive a car, you know, I know every time I get into a car, I'm not thinking about how I back up anymore, like when I first, because it's so habitual. When you start out with just that one goal, that becomes within, I think it's, approximately a month, it becomes a habit where you're not having to engage in it. So that's the concept here. Take on that new goal, and within a month or two, it's going to be a habit. It requires much willpower. That's why reading these 2 books at the same time, for me, was really effective, because I could see how this becomes then a supportive system. Oh, this is a struggle. I haven't developed this yet into a habit. And he gives you tips on how to create habits that are the habits you want to have. So I think that could, the concept of, even when you think about the goals we have at work, at the end of the day, a lot of our jobs become a habit because we're doing the same things over and over again. That's probably why we're able to take on multiple SMART goals, because there's a lot of things we're doing every day that it's not taking a lot of willpower, it's not taking a lot of effort. It's second nature. Speaking for me, for example, I don't get intimidated in front of people speaking. It's become a habit now for me. So there's less effort, happening inside of me around like, oh my God, is this, all that now is gone. So that now I get to create a new habit, whatever that challenge is, right? Asking for the business, for example, right? That's where I can put my willpower in. So I think goals at work or personally, develop them one at a time, let them become a habit, and then before you know it, you have increased. But then don't forget to reward, which we want to make sure we keep doing.